Tag Team GX. But on the other side of the field, we see a little bit more interesting cards.
Yeah, Preston is playing something pretty interesting for himself as well. He has had success with decks that have focused on alternate strategies. He had a top 8 finish at the North American International Championships just this year, I believe, actually. And that was with a wall stall deck. So over here, we already see him starting off this first game with a Ninkata in the active spot, and we saw pretty interesting cards in those Blitzels in this prize cards as well. So pretty cool to see what this is going to turn into for us.
Yeah, no kidding. We're already seeing the Ninkata, of course, potentially going to become a Shedinja, and Blitzel is just going to have access to Zebstrika. There's so many different cards that you just probably didn't expect coming into this weekend. Going to be interesting to see how Preston's deck starts to play out. But of course, that is only going to be 2 Pokemon in play for Preston before he ends his first turn. Remember, there are no supporter cards for players going first in this new Sword and Shield expansion.
Yeah, and there's, of course, we'd love to see how those new rules are going to interact. And honestly, we're not going to see very explosive turns often from a deck like this. He's probably not going to be focusing on something with Dedenne GX because he's trying to run this alternate strategy with Shedinjas and Oranguru. So just really nothing to do on that first turn. Uses a Great Ball, passes along, and now we get to see how explosive Michael Pramawat can make this turn for himself.
We're going to see a lot of decks potentially perform worse going first and going second throughout this weekend. That's just going to be one of the side effects of this new rule change for the Sword and Shield format. Now, going second, though, you have access to your supporters. You have access, of course, to your Pokemon like Jirachi. This could be a big turn for Michael. He's going to need some help from his deck, but, of course, his Pokemon are ideal already. He's already got a couple of Jirachis in play and a skateboard to go with it. Lots of Pokemon in play already for Michael as we start to see an EK as well.
Yeah, it's going with this older style of the deck. He's got the spell tags in there, so he can start to generate some damage with that. Has the Mew, and the Mew is actually a relevant attacker in a matchup like this. You can start to spread some damage counters and really start to disrupt your opponent.
All right, so Preston now taking a look at Pramawat's cards. Now, Michael's deck is not going to be something that we can expect to feel a little bit more rogue, meaning, less common than most decks. This is going to be a deck that we can definitely expect to see throughout the weekend. However, a lot of players coming, in the older formats believed that Malamar just wasn't very consistent. Maybe the addition of Quick Ball is going to change that here for these players, and maybe we're going to see more Malamar players than we're used to seeing in previous tournaments. But in the meantime, we're seeing an excellent setup out of Michael here before he even passes his first turn. We finally see him retreat that Jirachi, and Mew gets to attack and knock out an Ninkata already. This is a huge first turn here for Michael as he gets the first knockout of the game and also starts to set up his board to potentially start putting too much pressure on Preston before he can get started.
Well, we do see that Preston does have that Dedenne GX. He only plays the 1, and he has it in his hand, so should be able to get himself out of this awkward hand that he has to start off with. Going to go ahead and use that Adventure Bag, try to thin out a few of those tool cards from his deck, and maybe he'll be able to get something going here. He'd certainly like to find a little bit more. Maybe he can start to slow his opponent down if he gets an Oranguru and starts to pull away with some form of relevant attack here, because he's just been... the opening turn, he was just stuck. He just had to let his Ninkata get knocked out there.
We see Shedinja on this screen here. We see how Vessel of Life allows it to kind of just remove itself from play and actually become a tool and stop your opponent from taking prize cards. So we're starting to see Preston's strategy come into play. I don't think that it's uncommon for Preston to fall behind on prizes, so I don't think he's feeling too bad about this opening from Michael. But at the same time, Preston's starting to get some more Pokemon in play. Preston needs to get basically this weird setup of his, right? He needs to start getting more Pokemon in play to really start to show us what kind of a strategy we can expect to see out of him in this mid-game.
So Preston has decided to go with the Mew of his own. Can go ahead and use that ability, put his Shedinja on as a tool, and this will mean that Mew, if knocked out, is one less prize card will be taken. And just going to start to attack at that own Mew. He knows that that card can be pretty good when it starts taking knockouts. Doesn't want to lose any more other pieces, so just going to start to target that down.
Is this a matchup that, maybe potentially players have seen coming into this format?
It's tough to say because a lot of the hype of Malamar came around with Mewtwo GX decks, and Shedinja honestly wasn't one of the more known stall styles of decks. I don't know if this is the matchup that Preston necessarily wanted to see because he usually would like to see a little more time playing against larger tag team decks or these big new Z Pokemon that came out. So with the fact that we saw that Pramawat got off to such a strong start early and was able to start placing damage counters like that, it might be beneficial for Pramawat here in this spot.
Now we do take a quick look at Michael Pramawat, maybe one of the most consistent players to ever play the Pokemon trading card game, and he has shown to have a prowess here at these international championships, winning an international championship of his own previously.
The first one ever, man.
Yes, sir. Preston still hoping to get a big win himself. He has top-aided North American internationals in the past. Lieutenant Surge's strategy. Here we go. Professor's research discards the hand, draws 7 new ones. We still get one more supporter for the turn out of Preston.
Yeah, looking over at Preston's hands, does have access to a quick ball, so if he does have another strategy that he'd like to start working on, that'd be great. Unfortunately for him, he's not going to start to, he probably can't start to work on another Ninkata because he knows that a Distortion Door plus Mew could certainly lead to a knockout. Does have a Blitzel available to him. We know that he does have a few in his prize cards, so that is going to be his main way to get through his deck. And he does play 4. He plays a 4-4 line, so those 2 in the prize cards won't be terrible for him.
So what's Preston's route to victory look like in most matchups?
Well, he'd like to get the Shedinjas onto his Orangaroos and continually chain those together. If he could use resource management and just start to chain those, you'll never see a prize card being taken from your opponent. And maybe you can start to work in some disruption cards. You could see that Belelba and Bryson Man start to work in as well to start to discard your opponent's deck, and you can just win from that route. So sometimes you have to take these aggressive routes with knocking out Pokemon, but honestly, I think Preston just saw that Mew and said, well, that's a problem. Let's just get rid of that, and then I'll go to my regular strategy.
And sure enough, we see that Lieutenant Surge's strategy just draw Preston so many cards when combined with double Professor's research there. That's just 14 cards drawn, not counting Dedenne, not counting anything else. You know, that's just a lot of cards that you get to see. And of course, that means that Preston gets to start feeling his strategy start to come into fruition. We see that Blitzel going to become a Zebstrika soon. Another Ninkata on the bench.
So with this turn being a turn to knock out the Mew, he feels safe playing the Ninkata, so maybe he could be able to get that Shedinja out for himself. Does have another supporter available to him. I don't know if he would choose to use it. He might just want to hold on.
I think he's already played 2 supporters.
He's got 3, man. It's Lieutenant Surge, right? Did he need to have he Magnolia'd and...
I think he Magnolia'd twice.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's zooming then. All right, I win.
Oh, yeah, you never mind. I take it back. All right, Belelba and Bryson Man. The first time we get to see it this weekend. All right, and of course, choosing to use the other part of this this Belelba and Bryson Man. Of course, both players discard the top 3 cards of their decks, but now he's actually trying to get some of these dangerous Pokemon out of the field for himself. Doesn't want to have a field full of Dedennes, for example, where your opponent might be able to take a couple of easy prizes that you weren't expecting him to take. This is a great strategy out of Preston, really starting to get that setup he wants. But of course, Pramawat is too, right? He's got a couple of Malamars already in play, has that Blacephalon starting to get powered up. Lots of things going for both of these players the way they'd like them to go at the start of this tournament.
Yeah, we can start seeing some fireworks this turn. It looks like Pramawat does have an established line that he wants to continue working on there. He's going to start to spread some damage counters, and that could work out for him pretty well. He could target down Ninkata if he wanted to, or maybe he's really focused on that Orangaroo. That could be something that he's fearing. So curious to see what he's more concerned about.
Now,
I
first,
think we're going to find out pretty soon.
Uses Jirachi, gets himself access to another card, and now starts to get that strategy going again. We see Blacephalon just start to put more damage on his opponent's Pokemon. That Ninkata just so vulnerable with its low hit points, and that's another easy prize here for Michael. Pramawat has taken 2 prizes off of 2 Ninkatas for this game, and Preston has knocked out one of the, a Mew so far, so only a little bit more damage placement left for Pramawat this game.
Yeah, of course he will have access to his Giratinas with that distortion door, so maybe there's some sneaky ways that he could start to set up some damage, but you're right in that the direct damage placement is pretty much in the Mew and the Blacephalon there.
Right. Now Preston starts to try to get some more setup himself. I believe he already evolved into that Zebstrika. So now we get to see Sprint. We just see so many cards get to be drawn here from Preston. That's an interesting way of drawing these cards too. Like most of the time we're going to be expecting to see a lot of Chinchinos to really start to mow through your deck and just draw a lot of cards that you might not normally be able to draw if you're playing a more standard deck. But Preston choosing to go with Zebstrika instead believes he's just going to be able to keep discarding his cards in his hand down to a low hand size and just keep just cycling through the deck as fast as possible.
Yeah, that kind of just speaks to the way that he builds this deck. He wants to burn as many cards as possible so that when he does get to the end game, he just can continually use the same strategy over and over again. Just use that resource management, lock in that Shedinja, make sure the prizes aren't available, and start to use your discarding supporter effects and just start to burn through your opponent. Because if you're playing a deck like with Chincino in this, you're just going to draw a lot of cards, but then if somebody uses an effect like Marnie, your deck didn't get smaller, so you're kind of stuck in that aspect. So Sprint can provide a benefit by discarding all those extra cards.
The first resource management of the weekend, almost certainly not going to be the last. And
I hope it's the last.
and Michael Pramawat now gets to start his own turn. We see spell tag. We see lots of ways to accelerate energies. We see lots of ways to deal damage. But, I mean, we're starting to see how Pramawat kind of has to start racing here, right? He has to start making sure that Preston doesn't get comfortable yet. And Preston is not comfortable, but it seems like he's on his way, especially after drawing that Lieutenant Surge's strategy.
Yeah, that's a pretty helpful card for him. He's always going to be in a losing position almost all the time just because of the way that his deck is built and the way his strategy lines up. And for Pramawat, you know that he has access to Pokemon by way of using that Giratina with the Distortion Door, getting those energies onto it with Malamar, but choosing not to, it just wants to continue to focus on this main strategy of just placing damage. Maybe he can work out some sort of multiple prize placement with the way that his damage works and could find himself in a good position there.
Preston finding a Hoopa from his deck. I believe it was a quick ball. I'm not exactly sure how he found it, but he did find himself a Hoopa and immediately benches it. Acrobike looks at the top two. Can choose one and put it in his hand. The other one gets discarded. Goodbye, Oranguru. Pokemon communication. Shuffles an Oranguru from his hand into his deck to find himself any Pokemon and add it to his hand.
Yeah, this is tough for him. I think the only real card that he would want would be the Nincada. Maybe he could just grab the Oranguru again if he wanted to. Just use that trainer to look through his deck, maybe before Sprint.
We see how low Preston's deck already is. I mean, this is only like the fourth turn of the game.
Yeah, I mean, he moves. He's actually looking to take that Blitz. Might just discard it with the Sprint effect because I don't think he's going to be able to get that many Zebstrikas out at the same time.
We also got to take a good look at what's left when it comes to resources in Preston's deck, and it's not very many resources left. Now, of course, you know, we keep using the word resource, and there's a certain Pokemon in Preston's deck which allows him to manage them, but it's just, you know, you kind of have to wonder, like, how's he going to get out of this spot from that Michael's put him in?
Yeah, this is certainly pretty tricky for him. He's does have
Chaotic Swell.
He's got the Chaotic Swell. He's got some Pow Pad as well. Just looking to, his deck is getting pretty low there. Oh, he does have that Brock's Grit. That's going to be a helpful card for him. Has Tate and Liza as well, so maybe if he was able to gain access to that Tate and Liza, he could start to use the Hoopa as an attacking power. Just wants to get rid of that Blacephalon. If he gets that off of the board, then he knows all the other damage is coming directly from either sources like Giratina or even a Malamar attacking. So if he can remove that from play, that'd be pretty favorable for him. Just going to be pretty tricky to make that happen.
You see he's already really in the tank here, and it is kind of early in this game in the sense of, you know, how many turns have elapsed. But you see him try to formulate a game plan which is going to allow him to actually take a victory here. But it's looking a little bit difficult, if I'm being honest with you. It's looking like, given the amount of Ninkatas that just got knocked out before they could evolve into Shedinja, it's really put Preston in an uncomfortable situation, and now Preston has to try to find a way to recover. Preston finds himself another Ninkata, benches it, and that's looking like a big priority here for Michael. Michael might want to make sure that Ninkata never gets a chance to evolve into Shedinja and never gets a chance to really change the outcome of this first game here. This is a kind of like a bit of a tightrope that Preston has to walk through, and he has to find a way to protect this Ninkata if he can.
Yeah, I think he wanted to find access to a Tate and Liza so that he could switch out and use his Hoopa as an attack into that Blacephalon, steal a knockout, and not have to worry about any of those extra damage counters coming down for the rest of the game unless Michael has a way to bring that back into the deck. Unfortunately, wasn't able to find that. Has to take this alternate route where he plays a little slower, has that Brock's Grit, so he's going to get a ton of Pokemon back into his deck and try to have some fodder so that maybe he can start using some discarding effects later in the game. And when he's discarding those cards out of his deck, at least he knows that he's got some deck left to play with.
We see how stoic Michael looks here. Has likely seen it all in the Pokemon trading card game in the past. Nothing surprising about this game here from Michael, and he's just formulating this game plan, trying to make sure that he can secure this first game. Remember, it is a best 2 out of 3 match, which means the winner of game 1 still has to win another game before they are declared the winner of the match, unless time's called.
Yes, that is another way that games finish in the Pokemon trading card game.
There's a Palpad. Another Brock's Grit.
It looks like this is the resource management coming out.
Oh, yes. That would make more sense.
That's not a supporter. So does have an eye on a specific Pokemon that he wants to pull out with that Great Ball. Might be that, who knows, honestly. He might be expecting his Oranguru to get knocked out, or could be trying to eye up more of those. Oh, there goes Ninkata. So don't worry about that. Yep, Blacephalon. Michael's just going to play very quickly. Just goes ahead and takes that prize, knocks out that Ninkata, and he is getting himself pretty close now with that extra prize card, down to 3 prizes.
You know, this is where Preston wants to get multiple Ninkatas into play on one turn, right? This is where Preston kind of wants to go, like, well, you can't knock them all out, can he?
Right.
And if Michael can't, then all of a sudden we start to see some Shedinja play. But we were never really able to see that out of Preston this first game, at least not yet. And it's been 3 easy prizes for Michael, all 3 on Ninkata. And now finally Hoopa becomes the active Pokemon, I believe. It sure is.
That's right. We have Evil Admonition lined up to knock out this Blacephalon. It's going to be pretty relevant. It limits a lot of what Michael's able to do now. Michael really now has to be careful with where this spell tag damage goes. Seems to think he's going to need a couple of those on the Hoopa. 2 on the Ninkata's perfect for lining up for a multiple Distortion Door play, and I think that's what we're going to see out of him now.
There it is. Giratina gets Distortion Door lining up against Ninkata and Zebstrika. 3 damage counters on, well, 4 damage counters on Ninkata after that Distortion Door. Number 2 there. And that is another knockout, another Ninkata down. That's 4 Ninkatas knocked out, 4 prizes taken by Michael, only 2 remaining.
Yeah, Michael's really just pushing through. He doesn't want to use a lot of his deck, doesn't want to open up that potential out for his opponent to just start decking him out there. So playing as few cards as possible in order to get to where he needs to go. Placed enough damage so that he's going to be able to get through this Hoopa now when he starts to attack with his Giratina. So it looks like he's starting to line this all up. Maybe if he's able to find another spell tag, he could start to line up that last prize card for himself. But honestly, he put himself in a pretty great position here.
Now Giratina likely going to get knocked out here by the Hoopa, but still, the damage has been done, right? Well, actually, never mind. It's take it back. It actually knocks out the Hoopa. Of course, Giratina had yet to attack, and that is another knockout by Michael. 1 prize remaining here for Michael, 4 still for Preston, and more importantly, Giratina with a couple of Malamars for backup. It's just looking like it may be game 1 going to Michael here.
Yeah, if you see no Ninkata being able to hit the field here, then there's no way that Shedinja is going to be able to lock in and provide one less prize card being taken. Thank you. So the only attacker that really could see play that might be relevant here is the Mew. It does have that Shedinja down. He'd love to have that Shedinja, the Mew with the Shedinja in play along with a Ninkata. That would open up some sort of chain where he could continually chain Ninkatas back and forth over and over again, Shedinjas onto Orangaroos, and start to get through to where he needs to be. So this is one of the most crucial turns. If Michael did have some way to move the Mew out of the active spot or a way to compound some damage onto that Substrika, we'd see him taking this game just now.
That is extremely hard to do in this format, though, right? Because most people are playing things like Great Catcher. When you have no real targets for that Great Catcher, then you tend to struggle to get these Pokemon out of the active position for Preston, and that's kind of what Preston's banking on this weekend. He's banking on his opponents struggling to get these attacks against relevant Pokemon because of basically deckless just unable to answer every deck in this format, and it seems like if they're going to be targeting decks, they're probably not going to be targeting Preston's.
Right, and it's a difficult one to target. And Preston knows all I have to do is survive 4 custom catchers against a lot of decks, or maybe a few Pokemon catcher flips are what's going to get in my way of setting up this perfect lock that I can eventually manage. But he's playing against Michael, who is one of those just odd decks. He's got a way to attack the bench with nice damage counter placement, and we're really just going to see, was Michael one turn late? Does he have enough time? Is Preston going to be able to get this Ninkata and play for himself and get himself in a favorable spot if he could just chain these all together?
We saw those poor Ninkatas get shoveled right back into the deck with another Brock's Grit before the end of Preston's turn.
Got real scared for a second. I thought that he was using the Acro Bike. Instead, it was the Sprint, and he found himself 2 Ninkatas. So pretty great draw for him there.
And one Ninkata immediately got benched there. And a pass here out of Preston. 1 prize card remaining for Michael. Can he find the final knockout? Remember, the damage counter placement is basically gone at this point. All of these Pokemon have done their due. They've had their effect, right, in this game. But, and it looks like he did get the final knockout there. And that is going to mean 1 game up for Michael Pramawat against Preston Ellis. He found a way to take this final prize, and that means that Preston's going to have to find a way to win at least 1 game in these 27 minutes that are remaining.
Yeah, he's going to try to get himself at least that tie there. This is honestly probably not the matchup that he wants to see, and Pramawat knew exactly what he needed to do to get himself in the good position there. Pram had an interesting kind of setup. You saw where Preston Ellis decided to just pass instead of spread damage, and it's because Michael could start attacking and knock out his own Giratina over and over again, and maybe start to use Distortion Door from that way. He could just open up the damage spread like that. So Preston's like, I'm not going to give you extra damage, I'll just pass. But Michael was able to show him enough to where Preston didn't feel comfortable anymore, and we are going to see that second game start.
So you weren't wrong, right? Like, Preston does get to this point in the match where he wants to kind of finally run Michael out of options. Like, he has to get past the Mew. He has to get past the Blacephalon. All right. It happened eventually.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Preston, the damage was done a little bit too, there was a little bit too much damage done by these Pokemon before he could knock them out. But, you know, Preston had the game plan. He knew that he was going to have to run through these Pokemon, and he eventually did with the help of the Hoopa. But when you don't get multiple Ninkatas in play at the same time, you see how Michael just has easy knockouts. He has the easy, all right, I'll knock out that Ninkata. All right, you brought another one down. I'll knock that one out. At no point did Preston go like, Ninkata, Ninkata, Ninkata. Good luck.
Yeah, and I mean, it'd be nice if he was able to get multiple Ninkatas into play, because that's pretty much the strategy. If you can get those Shedinjas down, then you're going to be in a pretty good position. But that's kind of just the way that the deck works. You have so many other things that you need to get going as well,
right,
that if you don't, if you try to focus on Ninkatas, you might just be stuck with Ninkatas. you might get some Shedinjas and not have the Pokemon to use the ability onto. So you could be in an awkward spot. I really think that this game is going to come down to Hoopa, and if Michael is only going to put himself to 2 Pokemon with abilities. Because if Michael puts himself to 2 Pokemon with abilities, that means he gets he gets extra mileage on that Blacephalon. Doesn't have to worry about the 1 knockout, the 1-hit knockout there. So I'd really like to see if Michael decides to only go with 1 Malamar, if we do see the Jirachi come into play. He could just have that Jirachi, 1 Malamar, and then Blacephalon could continue to do a little extra work, maybe get that extra prize card, and steal a win where Hoopa could be a dominant force.
Now we do get to see if Preston decides to go first or second. It is no longer clear-cut. And as we begin this game, 2 out of 3, we see the prizes laid out here for both players. We see a Shedinja and a Hoopa actually here for Preston.
Blacephalon's prized.
And Blacephalon for Michael.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
All right, so it looks like Preston choosing to go first one more time. We see a great ball right away out of Preston with 2 Ninkatas in play. Finds himself a Shedinja with that great ball. Great ball just seems to have so many targets in this deck that it seems to be a great card in the deck, honestly.
Great ball's a great card.
Yeah.
That's what you can expect from us.
Oranguru comes down as well. We see how resource management really is the name of the game here for Preston. But Michael now gets to start his first turn of the game. Remember, already up 1-0. If he wins this one, he will start this Oceania International Championships with a 1-0 record, exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, and it looks like Michael is going to go with that Jirachi. He of course knows that he has a lot of time to get going, and he, being up 1 game as well is pretty favorable for him. So he is going to go ahead and use another quick ball, dump that Esper, and start to work on his strategy. He'd like to certainly check to see if his Blacephalon and his Mew are available to him. Maybe he can start to work on that Mew soon. Looks like he does have other plans, going to go for that Inkay. So that he does have access to some energy cards in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a great point where you want to have a couple of abilities in play, but not get to that point where Hoopa will be able to get a 1-hit KO. However, I mean, of course, we get the added knowledge of knowing that Hoopa is going to be prized, so it's going to be a little bit difficult for Preston to be able to come back with a 1-hit KO knockout. However, if Michael decides to go with multiple Malamars in play, then maybe he's just going for a more aggressive rush you down strategy like he did in game 1. Now with multiple Ninkatas in play on turn 1 and potentially even more Ninkatas from turn 2 onwards, it could get pretty difficult for Michael to really take the 6 prizes he needs. Remember, there are no easy GX knockouts here that Preston provides.
Yeah, it looks like Michael is going to go ahead and just take that Mysterious Treasure and pass the turn along, play nice and slow. We are going to see Preston playing at a lightning pace here.
As he absolutely needs to. Preston's deck is not the kind of deck that can really play 3 full games in the time allotted in Swiss. Now, there is the first Shedinja in play here for Preston. After that professor's research to draw himself 7 cards. Now these Blitzels going to be huge. That's how you get your mid game going. You need to get access to Zebstrika and Sprint. Potentially benching a second Blitzel. There it is, that second Blitzel as well. These Blitzels want to become Zebstrikas as soon as possible. Does not want to let his opponent take down 1 Blitzel and unallow him to actually evolve into a Zebstrika. Now Preston, once again, seems to play a lot of cards furiously and then slow down the pace. Needs to map out a game plan for himself. This is not an easy deck to play by any means. And Chaotic Swell now being the card of choice here for Preston.
Yeah, even wondering if it's time to start using the Oranguru. Really doesn't have that much available to him in his deck in his discard that he'd want to shuffle back in. So
yeah, it may actually be something like Professor's Research just to keep the consistency going for your mid game.
I'm just gonna pass the turnover actually.
And Michael Pramawat does not land head, so Jirachi's still asleep.
So it looks like Michael does play that Lana's Fishing Rod. It's a great way to shuffle in some of those extra Pokemon. So if he doesn't have the mileage in that Blacephalon because it's in the prize cards, he could use that Mew over and over again. That'd be a great way to continue to spread some of that damage.
Mysterious Treasure. Finding any psychic Pokemon in Michael's deck. Looks to be Giratina here. And there's that ordinary rod.
Lana's, man.
I'm sorry, I apologize. It's Lana's rod.
Yeah,
it's not
nothing
ordinary at all.
Yeah. Lana put a lot of hard work into that rod.
And now Professor's Research, 7 new cards for Pramawat.
Yep, going to get that Distortion Door Giratina into the discard pile so that he will have access to multiple damage counters whenever he chooses to. Don't know if he was able to find another escape board or a switching effect. Could just be stuck there. Going to go ahead and use his ability now with Jirachi, see if that'll help. And I don't think that works.
Well, you got to look at the top 5.
That's pretty good. Yeah. That looks
I think there's a Cynthia.
You know, when we're complaining about Cynthia's, it's probably when you know you're doing just fine.
Yeah, no kidding, right? And these Inkays still Inkays for now. We see a couple Malamars in hand, I believe.
Yeah, I wonder when he's going to choose to evolve them. I think he is afraid of the Hoopa in a sense. He doesn't know that we know.
He doesn't know that we know?
That everyone knows that it's in the prize cards. And let's keep it that way. If everybody else could keep hush, that'd be great.
Now, Preston gets to start setting up. This is what we did not get to see game one, by the way. This is going to be Preston starting to show us exactly what his deck is capable of, right? Like, we see a Zebstrika now. We see another Blitzel in play that could potentially become a Zebstrika eventually. We see a Shedinja already in play. I mean, this is what Preston wants. If Preston's deck is going to win, it's going to be with this kind of a setup against that kind of a setup for Michael.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty strong hand that he drew into as well. He's wondering if he needs to go third Blitzel here.
And chooses not to.
Yeah, that's fair.
7 new cards. There's the power of Magnolia, the power of Magnolia's research, actually.
Does have one of those fancy Pokemon communications. Going to find himself another Zebstrika. Sprints more online. But does he find what he needs to?
Quick ball, discarding. Another Professor's research there. There's that Mew. We saw how Mew was the first attacker of choice here for Preston, but it was actually to counter Michael's Mew. And this time around, it's Preston that's bringing the first Mew into play. A couple of Professor's researches shuffled right back into the deck. Good old pads. And was that a sprint now?
It looks like it was the research, so just continuing to push through.
Okay, so maybe we saw a sprint the first time around and not Professor's research.
Yeah, it was the yeah. So we do see that adventure bag going to be able to thin out a little more if he does have potentially some extra balloons in there. Looks like he already knows that the answer to that's no.
Another great ball. Look at the top 7, find a Pokemon. And doesn't. Wow, a couple of big misses there from Preston. Well, maybe I'm using the word big a little bit.
Yeah,
vaguely.
I mean, what's he honestly looking for here? He just wants to get his Oranguru in the extra spot, start to shuffle in some of those important resources that he loves to find. Gonna have the Shedinjas down.
The
On
vessel of
Mew.
life.
Yep.
×2, that opens up the bench for Preston there. You see how cool these Pokemon really are, and you see another Nincada hit the field. Could potentially become a Shedinja eventually.
I wonder if the second energy attachment starts to make Pramawat think if the Hoopa is prized. Because you generally see the Oranguru start to get aggressive and start to take attacks, but I think Preston was aware that the energy attachment onto the Oranguru might be a little more relevant than an attachment onto a Mew.
Yeah, plus, I mean, you know that Preston's deck is going to be very light on energy, like extremely light.
Yeah.
So these energy drops are all so much more important for Preston. Boom, 2 Malamars hit the field right away as Pramawat begins his turn. He knows he's got to start going aggressive now. Cannot allow this Oranguru to start managing too many resources. And it looks like we're going to be seeing Michael dump his hand at this point. We see another Inkay come down. Maybe it's, you know, if you have Hoopa, you have Hoopa. It could be one of those games here as we see Cynthia shuffle Michael's deck into his deck and draw 6 new cards.
Yeah, I think he had a spell tag in hand. He could have chosen to use Giratina's Distortion Door and attach that before the Cynthia, but actually wants to hold on to it for later. So might have a different approach that he wants to go with. Maybe not Giratina because he only has that one Psychic Energy in the discard pile for now.
6 new cards after that Cynthia.
Does find Switch. So you should have access to some form of attack this turn.
No Mew though, right?
That's what Jirachi's for, man. Come on. Quick ball, easy.
Oh, you're not wrong. What was I thinking?
This is Michael Pramawat. Come on.
Yeah, Jirachi doesn't miss twice. As we do see that quick ball found by Jirachi, that quick ball could become a Mew, and we could see a knockout on Nincada on this turn, honestly. We could see lots of things. Like maybe you just target down the Oranguru. Maybe you just don't let him start to get out of hand with that resource management. It really kind of depends on what Michael decides is going to be the route to victory here. What do you believe is going to be the right play here?
It's really tough because taking one prize now at this point is awkward. You don't want to just open up Lieutenant Surge for your opponent.
Right.
So you kind of want to just set up damage to take knockouts, but you're also ahead, and you know that this game is starting to dwindle down. So maybe just continue to truck along and spread a little damage here, a little damage there. It looks like Pram is going to stick with the general game plan of taking out Ninkadas. No Shedinjas means that you do get prize cards, and prize cards are how you win the game if you're Michael. So just going to have to keep on that line, take out the Ninkata there, and hopefully see a few more of those in the future to take out.
Chooses to go with a knockout on that Ninkata. We saw that switch, retreat that Jirachi, and promote that Mew that he found with that quick ball, and that is going to mean the first prize taken by Michael. That could also mean we're going to be starting to see some strategies here from Lieutenant Surge from here on out from Preston. That opens up that window for Preston, but at the same time, Michael just cannot let these shit just get out of hand. It's a tight game he's got to play, and he chooses to take the route that does not allow Shedinja to get out of hand.
Well, not going to have that Lieutenant Surge this time around. Does have to use his supporter for the turn just now. Finds Lieutenant Surge for a following turn, though. So maybe we'll have something to follow this up if we do see another Ninkata fall. I honestly don't know if he's even looking for the energy to start taking the knockout. He could remove the Mew from play, and he's already seen Alana's fishing rod, so he maybe thinks, well, if I just make all the damage have to go towards the active Pokemon, I'm just going to lock in my strategy, and I can take this game. But it is sort of a tying kind of strategy, you know.
There's that third energy on a Ringaroo. You do not see that every day.
Found knowledge.
This is what he set up for. He knew that he needed to have a way to remove either a Mew or a Blacephalon from coming into play, so he needed to have a way to take a knockout. Even if his deck isn't focused on knockouts, he did need to take this one specifically so that he could avoid any extra damage placement, maybe giving this Ninkata an opportunity to continue on into a Shedinja.
And I do not believe the Blacephalon was taken from the prizes, which means we're gonna see Michael kind of struggle to get damage placement from here on out. We might actually get to see a field full of Shedinja Pokemon through Vessel of Life.
Yeah, we might start seeing the fancy Giratinas placing damage on Giratinas over and over, trying to just use your Distortion Door ability time and time again, but this is exactly where Preston wants to be. He does have multiple Shedinjas in play now. He's going to be able to get. He actually found the Hoopa as well, so does have more attacking options if he wants to get aggressive here. So really, Preston is starting to lock in exactly where he needs to be. Just don't tell him about the clock because it's not going to make him any happier.
Yeah, no kidding. With only 12 minutes remaining on the clock, he is still down 1-0, despite looking like he may have to start get a foothold in this game. He may be in position to win game 2, but with only 11.5 minutes remaining, he's going to have to do it quickly.
Looks like he just counted out his deck, and I believe he saw 8 cards. So
yeah.
we're getting pretty dangerous here.
So he cannot play Lieutenant Surge's strategy. Remember, he did take a prize last turn. So Pramawat does stop him from doing so.
You start to see the nerves kicking in. Preston knows his deck is slower, but he is in a favorable spot. Such an interesting place to be. Choosing to go with the aggression of the Hoopa now. So really just is going to be fighting for those prizes, hoping that he's run Michael out of resources, won't just walk right into a Blacephalon once he gets to that third prize, because that could be really awkward for him. Really just going to have to see now if he can line that up.
You see these Ninkatas all in the discard pile, I should say. Potentially going to have to see a Brock's Grit soon. Chooses not to. Chooses to sprint it away. Remember, he only has access to one supporter card. He did not have access to that Lieutenant Surge's strategy, so he was going to have to say goodbye to these Ninkatas for now.
Chooses to use the Great Ball here. Gets that out of his hand. Thins down a little more. Does have 3 cards in hand, 3 in deck.
This is going to be a tight game here for Preston. He really wants to at least get a draw out of this, right? Now, there is a Brock script getting found, as well as a Lieutenant Surge's strategy that's going to be signaling a resource management here out of the game here for Preston. Now, Michael Pramawat has the advantage of being up 1-0. The time is on Pramawat's side. Preston has his back against the wall. The clock is ticking, and I do not know if he's going to be able to pull off this game. Remember, he's forced to resource management here. He's forced to kind of like just extend this game, and that's not what he wants to do.
Yeah, this is where if I'm Michael, I'm starting to count energies. I want to see maybe if I remove this Orangaroo from play, then my opponent might not have access to more energy cards. So if I can start to limit that, maybe it gets more tough for resource management to continue to shuffle these energies back in.
We see that field full of Malamars and just forced to pass. Jirachi staying asleep. That gives Preston more time to comfortably start to manage those resources, comfortably start to sculpt that deck. It's going to be a low deck, but it's going to be every card that Preston needs. With Belelba and Bryson, man, starting to rear its ugly head in a sense, right? Like it's just, it's starting to say, all right, maybe I can start getting the strategy into fruition. Maybe I can start to put this clock on Michael. Like I haven't been able to really do that. It's taken me a long time to set myself up. Once I'm set up though, and I've gotten there, I believe, now it's time to put that clock on Michael, and maybe we're going to see Preston steal this game and even things up at one game apiece.
Well, there is one interesting piece from that discard effect. Michael does now have a little extra energy to work with in his discard pile, so maybe he could start to use Giratina and remove this Oranguru from play.
Now, even if you remove the Oranguru from play, right, like you still have a board full of Pokemon that you have to deal with. There is another Oranguru already waiting in the wings, but there is 3 energy on this Oranguru, and that is important. That's 3 energy attachments. That's 3 out of the 4 energy in the deck. That's a lot, man.
Yeah, this is certainly scary for him. The way with Preston only having the 4, I actually don't know if he has the other one available in his deck. So
yeah,
if
maybe
this
in the
one's
prizes.
removed, if it's in the prize cards, having 3 energy on this Oranguru just means that he loses the game as soon as his Pokemon's knocked out, or he would need to have access to a way to shuffle in those energies. Just depends on if he's able to keep that available for him. He does continue to discard a lot of useful cards.
Now, we're not exactly sure. I know I didn't take a look at the prizes. I know I didn't see if there was an energy prize, but if there is, that would be a huge route to victory by Pramawat, because he would need to do things like Brock's Grid, and just it would slow Preston down so much. Resource management, end of the turn for Preston, 7.5 minutes remaining. I start to see this Giratina slowly power up. It may be ready. Is it time? Jirachi looks at the top 5, finds any trainer card, looks to be spell tag.
Yeah, it does finally have that Pokemon ready to start attacking. Can remove this Oranguru from play if he finally gets that way out. Does have that access, so can start to do something relevant, and it puts Preston back in an awkward spot. You already see Preston immediately start to grab his deck and see, oh, I didn't know this was coming so soon. Here he is now. It's been a little bit of time, but he is going to have to start playing the game again.
And now Preston with such a low deck that it looks like he can basically just draw the whole thing. Yep, he has gotten to that point. So Brock's Grit, the supporter of choice here for Preston, brings these Ninkatas back.
Yep,
maybe gets the energies back as well.
Yeah, I expected to see a few of these energies coming down as well. Needs to have those available to him. Just gonna go with I was wondering if 1 or 2 is the right choice here.
Yeah, I like this strategy a little bit more. You don't need 3 Ninkatas. You could need a little bit more diversity.
Yeah, there is that awkward turn where maybe you go for a discard with Belelba and Bryson Man, and then you remove all your Brock's Grit from your deck on accident, and then you just ran out of stuff, and then you have to start resourcing for those, and those might not be the cards that you wanted to resource back in that turn.
There's that energy. It was found, and now Ninkata hits the field. Another resource management in this turn with 5.5 minutes remaining. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe he's not even getting resource management yet. Or it seems like he's taking his time doing the resource management at least.
So this is the spot that Michael doesn't mind being in now. There's only
absolutely.
5 minutes left, and he's going to continually chain together. He just takes knockout after knockout. Even though they aren't getting him any prize cards, it takes Preston at least a minute to get back into this spot again, trying to set up the chain. And this isn't where Preston needs to be. He needs to be taking knockouts and or really burning through his opponent's deck. And because they're at a tied prize count, he can't do that because he has no access to Lieutenant Surge.
Preston needs to make this his decision. Whatever decision he goes with, he has to make it right now. Every second counts. You know you're already behind. You know the time's got to be running low. But he's been thinking about this for about a minute now.
Yeah, this is getting to a scary point now. yes, you did get the resources back into your deck. You are going to continue to do this strategy, but is this strategy going to give you enough time to win a game? And honestly, we're getting to that point where it doesn't look like that's possible.
I mean, Michael's deck has got to still be pretty healthy, right?
It's looking pretty thick over there.
Yeah. That's a thick deck right there.
Yeah,
And
I think
actually the handshake
Preston
does
just
mean
gets
Michael wins game 2 and actually just wins the entire match there. As Preston just ran out of time, he kind of knew that despite actually basically getting the setup he wanted, it just wasn't going to be enough. He just did not have the time to really take this game from Michael.
Yeah, Michael put himself in a pretty great spot, even though he didn't have much to do in that second game there, because he was able to take such an aggressive opening game and place all those damage counters and put himself in a spot where he won the first game. Preston's strategy